This episode of the Christian Philosopher will talk about what is wisdom according to St. Thomas Aquinas. Welcome back, everyone. Scott Sullivan here from the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. Today I'm doing a video on what is wisdom according to the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas, who, in my opinion at least, and in the opinion of many people, is one of the wisest people who ever walked this earth. So he's a good person to go to answer this question. So this channel, this series of videos I call the Christian Philosopher. My academic background is in philosophy, and I have philosophized from a Christian point of view. So it's the Christian Philosopher. But philosophy itself is the love of wisdom. It's the pursuit of wisdom. And everybody wants to be wise, right? Nobody wants to be a fool, right? It's a good thing to be wise. Being wise is not only a good thing, but quite often a rare thing. So I think people naturally seek wisdom. It's considered one of the intellectual virtues. So philosophy is this love and pursuit of wisdom. But what is wisdom exactly? So that's where we go to St. Thomas Aquinas. And following Aristotle, St. Thomas says, we call people wise who order things rightly and govern them well. Wise people, they do a lot of things, St. Thomas says, but one of the things they do is they order things rightly and they govern them well. So amongst all the other different things we might say about wise people, they order things for the good. They order things for a certain end. Okay, and wise is an analogous term. It can mean a lot of different things, but that's kind of wisdom in general. That's at least one of the things wise people do is they order and they manage things for the good. And St. Thomas says we can see this in various fields. For example, medical wisdom, right? Medical wisdom orders things and manages things for the sake of some good, the health of the patient, right? So they use different drugs and different machines and different prescriptions in order to bring about the end of the health of a person. And if you're wise in the medical field, a person with medical wisdom, right, they will do this well. Okay. And we see another example that St. Thomas gives us is military wisdom, right? A general, for example, a good general knows how to order things for the purpose of the military end, which is the destruction of the enemy, right? So the military general can order the planes and the tanks and the movement of soldiers and so on to bring about the end of military victory. So we have different types of wisdom here, but they all have this common element, you see, ordering things to bring about some kind of good or bring about some kind of end. And St. Thomas also says that wisdom has hierarchical structures, right? So take the example I just gave you of the general. The general has military wisdom. He orders all the different platoons and tanks and cavalry and all this stuff. But even down in those divisions, like in subdivisions, there's wisdom in there, right? The general governs the whole thing, but take the tank unit, for example. There's a guy down there ordering that. Right? He makes sure the tanks are built properly. He trains the guy in the tanks, and he answers to the general. So you see there's this hierarchical structure there. Same thing with the Air Force. Same thing with the soldiers on the ground, right? So there's hierarchical structure where there's the wisest guy on top ordering these pieces, and there's some subcategories of these people ordering these pieces, and it goes like that. Same thing with medicine too, by the way. Right? St. Thomas talks about this. He says these fields, wisdom is architectonic, meaning that there are levels or degrees of wisdom. Lower bodies serving those ends, which in turn answer to higher bodies. So you could do that with medicine too, right? See, like the hospital, organizing the hospital with the different departments with the cardiology and the neurology and so on. So there are different fields of wisdom, and wisdom itself has a hierarchical structure. And then St. Thomas says we can even consider it like this, that all these things, all these different types of wisdom could be said to be ordered towards producing a good life. You see, they could all fall under that. So we have the military to help us have a better life, the wisdom of an architect building buildings, the wisdom of the medical field. all the different sorts of things, the wisdom of the politicians, right? It's supposed to all bring all these pieces together, order and organize and manage all these different pieces together to bring us about a good life, you see. So that would be the highest end, St. Thomas might think, a higher end of all these other things anyway, of creating a good life. So the point here is that we have the wisdom of order. Lower ends serving to achieve higher ends, and the higher up you go on the scale, the more wisdom that's called for. All right? The higher up you go, the more stuff you got to manage, the more things underneath your category, so to speak, right? The higher you go up on the scale, the more wisdom that's called for. So smaller areas of wisdom serve larger areas of wisdom, you see. All right. But then St. Thomas says we can consider the ultimate goal or end of all things. Not just this particular area of medicine, not just that particular area of the military or building houses or anything like that. We can consider the ultimate goal of all things, the ultimate goal of the universe. Not just this wisdom here, this wisdom there, but wisdom of the whole thing. What's the end? The highest causes of the whole universe, St. Thomas says. Where did all this come from? What's all this for? Earth, solar systems, stars. What's the purpose of all this? Not just a piece of it. This, St. Thomas said, when you consider these things, this is the highest wisdom of all. If there is a purpose to the whole universe, Aquinas says it would have to come from the author of that universe, from the divine intellect, and he thinks this can be proven, by the way. So he's not just making this stuff up. So it would be, if there were such a purpose or an end and cause of the whole universe, where it all came from and what it's all for, where it's all headed, well, this would be the highest truth. Right? Thinking about these things would be the highest level of wisdom, because you're considering the highest category of order, the biggest category, the universe itself, right? This truth, the purpose and end of all things, St. Thomas says, this is the occupation of the philosopher. Philosophical wisdom now. And we could also get into theology too, but I'm not going to go there because I'm kind of staying in the philosophy field. But philosophical wisdom considers these highest truths. Let me say that again. Philosophical wisdom, not medical wisdom, not military wisdom, not political wisdom. Philosophical wisdom considers the highest truths, how everything is ordered and governed, you see. Now, of course, there are people out there who think that we're not able to know these things, but Aquinas disagrees. The human intellect is able to understand the concept of being, right? We can look at things and we can know what being is. We can come up with laws of being, like the principle of non-contradiction. A thing can't both be and not be at the same time. And in the same way, the principle of causality, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Every contingent thing has a cause. Different things like that. These laws of being, they apply to anything that exists whatsoever, right? The principle of identity. Everything is itself. A is A. That applies to anything that exists, not just material things. It applies to angels. It applies to God. Right? These are laws of being, and the human intellect can know these things by our observance of reality. We can come up with laws, not come up with, but we can discover laws of being. And when we do this, we get into what's called in philosophy, first philosophy, or metaphysics, you see. So the human beings, we're able to know these things in this sense. When we can know things about being, we can know things about everything that exists. I know that everything that exists is itself. I know that everything that exists can't be itself and not itself. Everything. Immaterial, spiritual, physical, planet, an angel, doesn't matter. You see? So what this is the study of first philosophy or metaphysics, the study of being itself. St. Thomas is adamant, and I think he's right, that we can do this as human beings. Our intellects can understand this. And since everything that exists is a being of some kind, when you learn about being, you can learn about everything. So this philosophical field of metaphysics, learning about being, learning about everything, right? This is the highest level of wisdom we can pursue, highest level of philosophical wisdom. In this way, the philosophical study of metaphysics can help us learn truths about the highest causes of things, the highest purposes of things. We could talk about God. We could talk about anything that exists when we do metaphysics, you see. So the philosophical wisdom, there are levels of it, and we have different areas in philosophy, ethics, politics, but metaphysics, the philosophical study of all reality, this is the highest level of philosophical wisdom. That's my point, because it studies all things. We can learn about all things through the study of metaphysics. So then that brings us to what St. Thomas calls the twofold duty of the wise person, the twofold duty of the wise man. If you want to be a wise person, you should do these two things, says St. Thomas. Whenever we're pursuing wisdom, we're pursuing truth, right? And whenever you pursue one thing, St. Thomas says, you push away or negate the other. If I pursue truth, I negate error. If I'm a doctor and I pursue health, I negate sickness, right? So when as a philosopher, we pursue truth, we remove error. We negate error. We see, so at the same time, so we have this twofold duty of the wise person, of the philosophically wise person, to learn truth about these higher things and then to refute the falsehood about them. That's the twofold duty of the wise man, according to the wise man, St. Thomas Aquinas. To learn truth about the highest things, that's the first duty. And the second duty is to refute error about those things. This is the twofold duty of the wise man. This is the duty of the philosopher. And if you're watching this and you're a Christian philosopher like me, you can see where this goes, right? To learn philosophical truth about things about God and to refute errors, which there are a lot of those things in our day about God. This is, I think, kind of the mission statement of the Christian philosopher, right? Aquinas, being the theologian, in addition to being a philosopher, he was a theologian. He likes to cite Scripture when he comes up. A lot of times when he reaches a philosophical conclusion, he'll cite a biblical verse to support it, to show how faith and reason are in harmony. And so, in this section that I got this material from the Summa Contra Gentiles, chapter 1 of his great works, he cites the book of Proverbs. He calls the book of Proverbs the mouth of wisdom. So this is scriptural support for this idea of the twofold duty of the wise man. He says, Proverbs 8:7 says, "My mouth shall meditate truth, and my lips shall hate impiety." My mouth shall meditate truth, and my lips shall hate impiety. So that's what the wise man should do. Meditate. The mouth shall meditate on this truth, to discover the truth, and hate impiety, hate that which is opposed to the divine truth. This is the mission of the philosopher, and this is the twofold duty of the wise man.